So I'm going to introduce you
Sure.
and thank you for being here.
Thank you for inviting me.
Dasha Brian, Belarusian directress, is the founder of Art Project Revolution. A political art project consists of short films and exhibitions on human rights topics. And the first question is, what made you create this project? What
So,
was the idea behind it?
so the idea behind it, I didn't want to create this project. I mean, like it wasn't my intention at the very beginning. I was just living in Belarus, and Belarus, yeah. So it's like very complicated Eastern European context here, but Belarus is
Mm-hmm.
very popular around the world for being the last dictatorship in Europe, and
Mm-hmm.
so yeah, the country is very unstable, and it's just like very hard to live there. And I was living there in 2020, and then it was the election year. So basically, it
Yeah.
was like the president that is now in power for 28 years, I think. We never had
Okay.
any other president. He was like the first one, and he's still the president. It was like and yet another election when everyone knew how they will end. But the situation was a bit different that time because it was right after the COVID. And during the COVID, we didn't have absolutely like the president said that there is no COVID, there is no virus, so that automatically means that we will not care about your well-beings. And if you want to survive, you have to do it yourself. And it was like the situation in the country was very bad because, of course, people got sick very quickly, and no one was allowed, like the doctors wasn't allowed to write that they have COVID because there are no COVID. And of course, there were no special equipments in the hospitals. There were like no new rules because of that. So it was absolutely like uncontrollable. So like this disease was spreading super fast because if
Mm-hmm.
you are in the hospital, you are staying in the room with people who can have COVID. So it's basically you never get better in the end. And the government kind of if someone died, the government said that well it's their fault because it's their health. They should have, I don't know, they should have, I don't know, care of themselves better or something like this. And I think this was the kind of the trigger for the society because everyone felt that no one will take care of them, and we had to do different donations to different organizations that were buying things to the hospitals so they can give it to the doctors so they will be able to help people. And then people from that organizations, they were arrested because they were doing something, illegal. And
Mm-hmm.
there were also a few candidates that actually that I don't know. I personally got the feeling that something can change if they somehow win the elections. And it's kind of formed the community that people kind of started to understand that we're all against it and we want to do something with this. So the protest started, and it was protest before the election, and then election happens, and then it was protest after the election. And during this time I was pretty active, like just a very active citizen. I was going and protest on the streets, but I was also very active as an artist. I was doing different artworks, and one of the artworks that I did was short film. And
Mm-hmm.
I work with, it's not a documentary. Like there are some things, like some features that people use in the documentaries that filmmakers use, but it's more abstract. It's like artsy kind of vibe of the films that I make. So it's made to play with people's emotions. So I give the context, but it's still like it's all about the emotions. So you can feel what's going on more than you can understand. Yeah. And I made this one film, and the next day after the shooting, the producer of the project was arrested. They came to detain her at her apartment. So they took her laptop, her phone, and they found all the information about what we were doing and who was responsible for that. And because of that, because this producer, she was in an apartment with another girl who called us and said that like the situation is very bad. You should leave the country if you can. So I packed and left the country pretty much like I think the day after it happened. And this producer, she was in the jail for 3 days. Then they released her because they wanted to change the like so they didn't say that she can go like freely, but they just like they said that they will change something in her case. And after 6 months, they said like the lawyer called to this producer girl and said that I can't give you any information, but I advise you to go for holidays right now. So she packed very quickly and she also left the country. And by the time when she came to Ukraine, because it was 2021, yeah, 2021, and she came to Ukraine. And by the time when she got there, she got the call that the government started the criminal case. And I was in Poland all of this time because I successfully left the country. I had like a little stressful situation at the border because they stopped me and they took my passport and they asked me to wait for a couple of minutes and I didn't know what's going on, but then they just returned the passport. They didn't explain anything and they just said, yeah, you can go. So I left and I didn't know what's going on. Like if we have the case, we don't have the case. I kind of learned everything what was going on for this 6 months that I was out, only through this producer girl who managed to escape in the end. And we still don't know like what is this in Belarus, you know, because like they kind of wanted to start this case, but we are not sure if they finished it or like, you know, what's going on there. And yeah, so she came to Warsaw after that and we've met and we talked and we decided that yeah, at the beginning it's supposed to be a film, but just a film. But then we decided, okay, maybe we should start a project because it sounds like a project. It sounds like we should make some kind of a statement because during that time, if you manage to leave the country, because a lot of people were arrested, like every day you got the news that someone from your friends or from your friend's family got arrested for doing something, I don't know, like movie, painting, whatever. And you felt guilty because you managed to escape this fate and you felt the pressure that you need to be the voice of the people who can't speak. And this was the original idea of it. So I basically started the project thinking that if someone inside the country can't speak out, then I should be the person who do this because I feel more or less safe. And I'm also kind of closer to Europe, so I can spread the word about Belarus. I can tell people what's actually going on in the country, that it's much worse than the TV shows, that it will get worse and worse and worse. So this was my agenda. And I'm still like, I don't talk about Belarus specifically right now because I also don't feel like I feel the connection to the country. Of course I do, but it's just like not that fresh anymore. So I can't say what's going on inside the country because I'm not there for 4 years. You can't go back. But at the same time, you can't erase your past and your experience. So of course, every topic I decide to raise in my films or in my art, it's somehow connected to this Eastern Europe context. Yeah, it's connected from the like. I usually talk about the perspective of being a female in another country, or like a female refugee, or a political refugee, or just the forced, you know, about the experience of forced immigration and how it influenced your understanding of the word home. What is home like? So yeah, I kind of continue talking about these things, but from a bit different perspective. And it's working pretty good because I've seen and what I've discovered that people are more likely to listen to you if you show this kind of very traumatic and very brutal topics through something beautiful and a bit abstract. So they
Yeah.
like the image, they like how it looks like, and then they receive the message. And it's
And
easy.
also, it's about the feeling, as you were saying.
Yeah,
It
exactly.
portrays more the feeling than just documenting a fact.
Yeah.
It's a mixture of fact with how people actually feel in the situation.
Yeah.
And was this movie that started, was it the first movie, 000109? Is
No,
it?
no, the
Or
first
was that
it's oh no, it's 09. Yeah, yeah, this one.
so
0908. This is the movie that started this mess.
yeah. Because I thought it was really interesting how it's also got a lot of humor in it and
Yeah.
satire. And that was one of my questions. If you think that this kind of like showing the absurdity of the political power can be a way, is if the like the humor can be a way of also approaching themes of political power.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're talking about the other one. You're talking about 0001 or something like this, because I can explain why it's so complicated to remember my own titles, because there were a concept at the beginning. Because yeah, the first movie, like the one that started everything, it's called 0908 because this is the date of the election. So basically the date when the protest began.
Okay.
And because of that, I thought it would be cool if all the movies will have the like the date, you know, like or something that will be hidden under the numbers or something like this. So we all had these working titles, like the titles that we use, and also like these official ones. And you're talking about the movie that has a working title that's called Perfect Citizen. And
Yeah.
yeah, it's like a very it's full of humor. And when I was doing this, when I was creating this, writing this film, I was thinking about like people in power, especially people have people who have like I'm trying to put it into the right words, but like I don't think that the dictators are the people who are very strong, who are like, because I think that they're like very weak inside.
Yeah.
So it's very easily to kind of piss them off because they're not very kind of, they don't have a very high self-esteem. So they kind of try to prove that they are strong and they can do everything only if they put someone down. They also explain like all the arrests, especially like people who just, I don't know, made a joke or made a stand-up concert or something like this, because they're just like afraid to be humiliating.
Yeah.
And I was thinking that this is a good way of talking about the problem, to, well, not to humiliate them, but just like to show it from a slightly different perspective, from this like funny perspective. Because also what I've noticed, I had a lot of trauma connected to all of this situation, even like before 2020, and I'm still dealing with all of this trauma. How I don't know, talk to people, like all this trust issues, you know, like there were like huge. I got the whole package with this Belarusian passport. But I've also noticed that one of the methods of how I'm dealing with this trauma is basically making jokes about it.
Mhm.
And this is my way of how to make it less traumatic to me. And this movie was also my attempt to show people how ridiculously stupid it looks like when you actually follow what the government asks you to do without the questions. And I wanted to show it in like this very absurd way, because you know
Yeah.
this is how you live your life. This is exactly how the life functions in Belarus. And I just wanted to show people that's how it looks like from people who is outside, just like you decided to basically, because there is a scene in this movie when because the person has those things in the mouth, so he cannot open it, he cannot speak. But there is a scene when he is eating and he just like, separate those things so he can open the mouth. So it's not that he can't speak, he just decide not to. And it's also like the situation. This is exactly the situation that people were quiet for such a long time. I do understand why they don't speak now, because the situation now is very bad. And I do not blame people inside the country for deciding not to do something like this, because it's extremely dangerous. But we still had those 27 years for actions. And a lot of people, and I've talked with a lot of people, and they said that first it was like, well, maybe it gets better. Then it was, well, it's bad, but not for everyone, because they were like kind of like they were destroying people, but only like very specific one, the one with power, the one with money. And the majority of people, they were like, okay, it's not good, but it's not about us, this kind of attitude. And this is exactly why the world is broken right now, because this is the attitude of every person right now. And it's basically the action started only when it was about someone from your family or someone from your friend's family. So when it was like that bad that it touched you or your family, or I don't know, someone who's very close to you. So only after that people started to think that it's not okay. But before, they were like silently watching how these things happened, like awful things that not supposed to happen. They were just like watching, because it wasn't about them, it was about something else. Someone else.
On that, because you also explore a lot of different themes with your project, obviously politics, power, but also the female body in art. And there was a whole film about sexual violence, how women artists weren't represented for a long time. And joining all of these themes, I wanted to ask you, what is, I mean, it's a very general question. It's a very, but what particular human rights topic you think we should be speaking about right now, in the state of our world?
Yeah, I mean, like it's changing very quickly. And like what I've noticed, but actually the concept of human rights, it's not that old. Like we basically, like the human, like people decided that we need human rights, like some basic kind of things what you can't do to other people, only after the World War II. So you basically had to destroy so many countries and kill so many people for us to understand that it's not okay. Like this is the beginning of the problem, in my opinion, that it's just like it's such a late concept. And I mean, like it's something so obvious that every person deserves to live, but it wasn't like that obvious for such a long period of time. I'm mostly talking about females, like about women rights, because I am a woman and I came from the country that doesn't have a very friendly environment for being a woman. And I came to the country that also doesn't have a very good environment for being a woman, because I live in Poland, and Poland is the country where you can't get an abortion. It's officially illegal. And there were a lot of protests because of that, but there are still no results. Like again, women have to die, and still the government will not make this decision. They will not do literally anything to try to save the life of the woman. And also, yeah, I do, because like again, I'm an artist, I'm a woman, and every time when I try to use my body in my work, it also kind of sometimes I receive the like a very specific messages from people who are not like I can't say not allowed to send those messages, but like it's the people in power, like, you know, like curators, or you know, like someone who can't give you this kind of feedbacks, you know, they can't say that you have such a hot body or such a sexy body or whatever. So just like this kind of the line, they like people crossing the line all the time when you work with the body, when you show your body, especially naked body of the of woman. And it was like through history of art, you know, like starting when women couldn't be artists themselves, and like, you know, when they weren't allowed to even be in the room with men, but at the same time they could be naked in this room if they were posing for those men who were like painting them and things like this. So yeah, of course I'm focusing on this, but at the same time I was talking about refugee rights as well, but especially I was focusing on people from LGBTQ plus groups. And I would like to focus more uh, on people who are, for example, in the context of Europe, who are not like the refugees that Europe wants, you know, just because they're not white enough, for example, for Europe. Because like in the context of Poland, there is a situation still in the Belarusian Polish border where people die in forests because they were like they tried to cross this border because they also was like running from their countries, and there were like people from Iraq, from Iran, from Africa, and the Polish border just closed. They decided to close the border. They decided to build the wall and leave people die in the forest. And also when Polish side try to go there and to help them, you know, not just like drag them in the country, but just like give them water, or I don't know, like some warm clothes, they were refused. They said like, if you do this, we will arrest you as well, we will detain you. And I was in a situation when I had to cross the border, when I didn't have the documents I needed to, like, you know, because it was still COVID times, it was 2020. I didn't have literally like nothing from their list. So they had to say no to me. But they didn't do this, you know, because I looked European enough for them.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And I am very grateful for that because it saved my life. But I don't understand why it doesn't apply to other people. Like, I
Yeah.
don't understand why my life was, for them, it was very obvious that they need to save my life, but it's not obvious that they need to save the life of other people. I don't get it. So I do think that this is a very serious topic, and I think that we do not talk enough about this. Also, in the context, you know, I think that our generation is more political than the previous one, because I see a lot of people who have opinions about everything that is going on in the world, but there are some things that I just don't get as a person, as an artist as well. So, for example, if we talk about the context of Israel and Palestine, again, in Germany, it's basically like now the same situation as it was in Belarus in 2020. They don't allow people to do protests, like pro-Palestine protest. They arrest people, they kick people out of their jobs. So they basically do the same thing that I experienced being in Belarus. But also every time when I hear someone talks about this, you know, like the rhetoric goes, okay, but like I'm not educated enough to say something about this conflict, you know, because it's been going on for years and blah, blah, blah. I can't take side. But I just like, what I don't get, it's not about taking side. It's not about giving a political point of view on the situation. It's more about genocide that is happening right now, and no one wants to talk about it. Like, media doesn't want to cover it. And again, for me, it's not the why it happened. it's not about how it started. It's more about there are people dying and we do not care about it. So I think that's, but also it's been blocked, you know, like when people try to talk about it, especially through art, I'm talking about the perspective of art. They're not allowed to do this because there are a lot of countries that kind of, okay, we're not doing this exhibition if you're talking about this.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And
once institutions, big institutions are involved,
yeah, and they were like, you know,
yeah,
no, like we're not
it's a
talking.
complete centering of
Yeah, and I mean, for me, like the only message that I get from it is that they know that the art is a very powerful tool to influence people's mind. And that's exactly why they don't want artists to do work on this, you know, on this particular topics, because they are afraid that it's, you know, it will resonate in other people's mind. They will probably, you know, change their minds about, or at least, okay, maybe not change the minds, but maybe they will try to think more about the situation when they when they will see from, again, this art perspective how bad it looks.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think for people who do political art, this is like a very good time, because there are like so many topics that should be raised. And again, I believe that artists should do this art, like they should do, especially if they feel like it. Of course, you can't, you know, say to someone that you should do something that you don't care about. But yeah, I think that this is the time when we have to use every tool that we have as people to talk about the things, because it's important, because it's not that if we ignore this, the life will be better at some point. Because, you know, if something like this happens to one of the groups, it automatically means that it will happen to another group as well. You know,
Yeah.
if there are, if someone takes women rights away, then there will be like gay rights that will be taken away. Then like other people's rights, they will be taken away. It's just like it will never stop. Like people in power, it's usually white cis men. They are safe. They are fine. But you know, it's still like you have to protest. You have to have this like mindset that you have to fight for other people's right, because it's also about you in the end, because it